Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first video learning about business taxation and tax updates for entrepreneurs and other professionals. I am your speaker for today. I am Maria Cristina Cruz Caimo, a certified public accountant and a managing partner of Cruz Caimo Partners and Associates at Accounting. Meron ba kayong idea of what taxation is all about? Probably we have a very different reasons why we would like to tackle about business taxation. But according to Benjamin Franklin, there are only two things that are certain in life. Okay? So it is actually death and taxes. Okay? So kumbaga, ang tanging sigurado lang daw sa buhay na ito ay dalawa lang. Kamatayan at taxes. Do you agree with that? Okay? So, if you really wanted to become a full-fledged entrepreneurs, okay, dapat hindi kayo nalulungkot when the topic is all about taxation. Because you have to accept the sad, if not the happy fact that taxes is part of business. So we have the following objectives for this lecture. First is to have an overview of the business taxation as well as the obligations and rights of a taxpayer. Number two is to understand the fundamental laws relevant to the business taxation, to be familiar with the registration procedures and guidelines, reportorial requirements by the taxpayer and his trade, business and profession, and to be familiar with the types of BIR forms used in filing returns, deadlines of filing, and payments and computation of applicable taxes. So let us first discuss the fundamentals of taxation. So what is this taxation all about? So let us define taxation. Taxation is the act of laying a tax. Example, the process or means by which the sovereign, through its lawmaking body, raises income to defray the necessary expenses of the government. In short, taxes are the enforced proportional contributions from persons and property levied by the lawmaking body as the state by virtue of its sovereignty for the support of the government and all public needs. Okay. So sa madaling salita, taxes are how we pool our money for public health and safety, infrastructure, research and services, from the development of vaccines and the internet to public school and universities, transportation, courts, police parks, and safe drinking water. So lahat ng ginagastos sa gobyerno sa pagpapasweldo ng mga police, mga public school teachers, and even yan sa ginagamit natin to what had happened sa Visayas, they all come from our funds. They are all came from our taxes. Okay? So in short, just like a blood that makes the body function and sustains it, taxation does the same for a government or a country. So there are kinds of taxes as to the scope of authorities imposing the tax. First, we have the internal revenue taxes. Okay, these are the taxes imposed under the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 by virtue of Republic Act 8424 as amended and administered by the Bureau of Internal Revenues. So ito yung mga taxes na ina-administer ng BIR. Okay. So local government unit taxes, these are taxes imposed under the Local Government Code of 1991 under Republic Act 7160 as amended and administered by the local government units. So yung pong mga business permits na pina-apply natin every time that we register or renew our permits, ito yung klase ng taxes na binabayaran natin. Okay? The tariff and customs duties, these are taxes imposed under the Tariff and Custom Code by Presidential Decree number 1464 as amended and administered by the Bureau of Customs. So kung meron kayong mga importations, okay, ito yung mga klase ng taxes na sinesettle natin before we can actually release the goods. Let us discuss the types of internal revenue taxes kasi dito magpo-focus at ito kasi yung mas marami pagdating sa taxation in the business. Okay. So there are actually 6 types of internal revenue taxes, and these are the income tax, business tax, documentary stamp tax, the estate tax, donor's tax, and excise tax. So let us first define what is income tax. Income tax is a tax on all wealth which flows into the taxpayer other than as a mere return of capital. So, not all receipts of a person constitute income. So, in short, lahat ng mga remuneration na tinatanggap ng tao is part of his income. Kaya lang, may mga certain proceeds na nare-receive ang mga tao na may not be a part of their income. For example, yung mga insurance, nakaklaim ka sa insurance because something happened. So, that is not your income. That is actually part of your proceeds from your investment, but it's not actually taxable. Okay? So, business tax is a tax imposed on each sale, barter, exchange, or lease of goods or properties or services in the course of trade or business. There are actually two kinds of business tax. First is the value-added tax. Okay, ito yung medyo sikat. It is a type of business tax imposed on a product whenever value is added at a stage of production. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, just to make a more familiar or more understandable definition of a value-added tax, it is actually the tax imposed for the value added to a particular product. For example, when you buy a fish from the market, okay, so it's a raw fish. May VAT ba siya o wala? Normally, wala siyang VAT because it is still raw. Okay? But if one restaurant or a karinderya buy that fish, okay, at niluto na niya yon, so there is already a value added for that product. Okay? So, pwede na siya kainin. Cannot eat a raw food or a raw fish. So, kapag niluto na siya, meron na siyang value and it can be marketed already. So, that becomes VATable already. Okay? So, it is an indirect tax. Thus, it can be passed on to the buyer. So, when you say indirect, pwede mo siyang ipasa sa buyer. Okay? You can actually shoulder it, but since it's an indirect, pwede mo siyang, for example, I bought that fish at 80, and then I intend to sell it at 100. So, doon sa 100 na yon, I will add 12%. So, it becomes 112. So, instead of just collecting 100 from the buyer, I will have to collect 112 from her or him. Okay? Kasi I pass on the VAT. Okay? And it's legal. Okay? So the next business tax is the percentage tax. It is a business tax imposed on persons or entities whose gross annual sales or receipts do not exceed 1,919,500 and are not VAT registered. Okay? To simplify the explanation of percentage tax, almost all products or services are already VATable at this point. Halos wala na. May mga certain na lang na exempted. But if you are a businessman or an entrepreneur na merong na hindi aabot ng 1,919,500 yung sales mo annually, okay, you have the option to register it as a non-VAT taxpayer. Okay, pwede yon. Okay, basta hindi ka aabot sa threshold na yan. Pero once that you reach that threshold, it is already a mandatory. It's a mandatory requirement that you have to upgrade your registration from non-VAT to a VAT-registered taxpayer. The other tax is the documentary stamp tax. It is the tax imposed on documents, instruments, and papers evidencing the acceptance, assignment, sale, or transfer of an obligation, rights, or property incident thereto. Okay, ito yung mga nakikita nyong doc stamp na inilalagay sa schools, yung sa mga certificate, di ba may mga nakalagay doon, yan. Doc stamp tax ang tawag doon. So yun sa mga agreements, whether it's a lease agreement or a service agreement, a management agreement, nilalagyan niya ng documentary stamp tax to make it a public document. So the other tax is the estate tax. It is a tax imposed upon the gratuitous disposition of private property. This is a tax levied on the transmission of property from a decedent to his heirs. So dito sa taxation, okay, may tax sa buhay. Pag namatay ka, may tax pa rin. Okay? So before you can actually transfer the property to your heirs, okay, you have to settle first yung estate tax. Okay? So they cannot acquire ownership kapag hindi mo ito na-settle. Okay? So ito yung, kumbaga ito yung tax sa mga namatay. Okay? So the other tax, ito din related sa transfer ng property. Okay? Pero this is the tax doon naman sa mga buhay. Okay? So the donor's tax. It is the tax levied on the transmission of property from a donor to a donee. So kasi hindi naman nangyari, for example, ako, donate ako or binigay ko yung land ko sa anak ko. Okay? Hindi ko na naman kailangang hintayin na mamatay ako before I can actually transfer that property. Pwede pa rin na habang buhay ka, bigay mo sa kanila. And this is the applicable taxes that will be imposed on you. So the last one is the excise tax. It is a tax imposed on certain specific goods or articles manufactured or produced in the Philippines and to things imported into the Philippines. Example, yung mga taxes na may mga certain excise tax, ibig sabihin, a certain percentage from a particular product. For example, yun sa mga tobacco, automobiles, alcohol, yan, mga subject yan sa excise tax. Mining industries are also included in the excise tax. So let us now discuss what is the mode of collecting taxes. So paano ba kino-collect ang taxes? First, we have the direct mode, okay, tax which is demanded or collected from the person who also shoulders the burden of the tax. So, sa atin, mismong taxpayer, kinokolekta ng BIR. Yung voluntary payments natin, monthly, quarterly, annually, that's direct. Okay. The other one is the indirect mode, which is the collecting of taxes through other person known as the withholding agent for and in behalf of a person liable for a tax. Meaning, we are being taxed, pero hindi tayo ang nagbabayad, ibang tao. Okay? I'll discuss this further in the next topic. Okay? So let us discuss indirect mode of collecting taxes, which is also known as the withholding tax system. Okay? There are actually 3 kinds of withholding taxes. Okay? So kung familiar kayo sa word na withholding tax, okay, you have to understand that withholding taxes are not taxes. It is just a mode of collecting tax. Okay? Hindi siya tax. Okay? Pamamaraan siya ng pagkolekta ng buwis. Okay? Ito yung klase ng mga withholding tax. Una, yung final withholding tax. Mode of collecting taxes by which the buyer as payer or withholding agent will withhold the amount of tax which constituted as full and final payments. Okay? The liability for payment of the tax rests primarily on the payer as a withholding agent. Example, sale of capital asset. Kapag ikaw ay nagbenta ng lupa sa isang tao, ikaw individual ka, hindi ka engaged in trade or business, and you decided to sell your property, okay? Yung buyer mo na yon, okay, is actually obligated to withhold 6% from that sale. Kasi ang tawag doon, final withholding tax, which is in the form of a capital gains tax. Okay? Yung ibang example na mas I think you can relate is yung interest sa bangko. When you have a savings account or na nag-earn ng interest, kung ang rate ng interest ninyo doon ay for example 1%, yung doon sa total amount na supposedly interest doon, babawasan pa yun ng 20% final tax. Kaya kung kukomputin nyo yung interest talaga doon sa passbook sa deposit ninyo, you can actually see bakit kulang. Sabi niya 1%, pero pag tinignan mo kulang, it's because of the final tax. Okay? So even my mom nagtaka noon kasi tinuruan ko siya how to compute interest. So sabi ko, sige, paano ba mag-compute ng interest? PRT ka ako, principal times rate times times time. So natuto siya, tuwan-tuwa siya. Binalikan niya ako pagkatapos, sabi niya, bakit kulang? Sabi mo ganito, ganyan. Sabi ko, kasi mami meron niyang 20% final tax. Hindi ko na-explain sa kanya, so kasalanan ko pa ngayon. Pasensya na, tao lang. So the next withholding tax is the creditable withholding tax. Okay. It is a mode of collecting taxes by which the buyer as payer, withholding agent, will withhold the amount of tax which intended to equal or at least approximate the tax due. Okay? The income recipient is still required to file a tax return and a tax withheld are creditable in nature. So yung kanina, final withholding, ibig sabihin, kapag nag-withheld ka ng taxes doon sa yung buyer nag-withhold ng tax sa'yo, hindi mo na kailangang i-report sa income tax return mo yung sale na yon. Why? Kasi it's a final withholding tax. So that's what's good about final withholding. Hindi mo na siya i-report sa inyong return. Okay. Ang creditable withholding tax, ito naman yung mga income remunerations mo o nare-receive mo from the practice of your business na wini-withheld na nila. A very good example is actually yung compensation. Okay? So yung mga empleyado dito, sino yung nagsabi na dumadaan lang yung sweldo nila sa kanila? Pagdaan, bawas pa, tama ba? Okay, so that's actually is withholding. UPOU is actually a withholding agent for their employees. So any business or entity is a withholding agent to their employees. Bakit? Kung ang kumikita doon is the employees. Remember, sabi ko, withholding tax is not a tax. It is a mode to collect tax. So in that case, palagi nyo kasing iisipin in accounting, okay, ikaw yung business. Okay? Huwag mo na munang isipin yung ibang parties. Ako yung business, palaging ganon. So when you say, ako yung business, I am the business entity. So if I am the business entity and I have my employees, okay, I am a withholding agent to my employees. Okay, sino ang tinax doon? Ako o yung employees? The employees. So hindi ko siya tax. It is actually a tax, the income tax of my employees. But since I withheld it, it becomes my withholding tax. Nakuha po? So, yun yung sinasabi na withholding agent. Another example is, for example, rental. Okay? So, if I'm the business entity, syempre, I have to hold office. So, dalawa lang tanong yan. Pag-aari ko ba yung property of, or rented ko siya? So, for example, ni-rent ko siya. So, kung nag-rent ako, who derives income from that transaction? Okay? Yung lessor ba o yung lessee? So, ako, being the lessee, ako yung magbabayad sa kanya. So, ang kumita doon is the lessor, yung may-ari ng property. Okay? So, kapag ako nagbayad sa kanya, I am obligated to withhold 5% from that rental. Okay, so kung para mas madaling computein, 1,000 yung aking rent doon, 5% of that is 50 pesos, I have to remit 950 to my lessor and 50 pesos to the BIR. So in short, my rental is still 1,000. Na-split lang yung payment. Yung payment ko doon sa lessor at yung 50 pesos sa BIR. So walang additional gasto sa akin. So, hindi ko kasi siya tax. Okay, tax siya nung lessor. So, who are the persons required to deduct and withhold taxes? Okay. So, yun ang tanong. Sino ba dapat ang withholding agent? Sino ang hindi? So, RR 2-98, Section 2.57.3 as amended by RR 14-2002, Section 3. So, you can find the reference to this. Okay. So, in general, any juridical person, whether or not engaged in trade or business. So katulad, pwedeng tao, individual or entity, na pwedeng hindi engage in business. Katulad kanina, sabi ko, nagbenta ka ng lupa, hindi mo naman ginamit for business purposes. Ginamit ko for my personal use. Pero still, yung transaction requires withholding, so I have to withhold. So withholding agent ako. Yun ang tawag doon. Okay? So an individual with respect to payments made in connection with his trade or business. However, insofar as taxable sale, exchange, or transfer of real property is concerned, individual buyers who are not engaged in trade or business are also constituted as withholding agents. So, kanina, binanggit ko yung isang business entity in withholding tax. Pwede din kasi na ikaw, individual ka, whether you're a sole proprietor, so engaged ka na in business, or hindi ka proprietor, pero bumibili ka rin, and that transaction requires withholding. So, halimbawa, ito, yung kanina, in-explain ko, yung rental. So, yung transaction actually requires withholding. So, kahit ako individual, pwede pa rin ako maging withholding agent. Okay? And all government offices, including government-owned and controlled corporations, as well as provincial, city, and municipal governments and barangays. So, kahit yung city hall, okay, yung mga barangay, nagwi-withhold din sila. In fact, hindi lang sila nagwi-withhold ng expanded withholding tax. Okay? Nagwi-withhold din sila ng withholding VAT and withholding percentage tax. So, may mga additional requirements per government. But we will not tackle that. Wala naman yatang nasa government